I see one young gardener.
So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this program about beginning gardening with Ashley Rooney, who is one of our very favorite library speakers. She is an avid gardener. She is the president of and co-president of the Lexington Field and Garden Club, the oldest garden club in the nation and the largest in the Commonwealth. She's written lots of books about and gardening articles and books about related topics like fairy gardens, garden ornaments, walls, fences. You can look her up or you can chat with her and ask her lots of questions about her books at the end too. So I'm going to hand it over to Ashley, and we are so happy to have you here.
Great to have you all here. And you know what? Today is Earth Day, so it is so appropriate that Mina picked this day that we would do all this. Now, I've been a gardener for years. I haven't taken a lot of fancy courses. So when it said in the advertisement for the library that I was a master gardener, it's master gardener with lowercase m's and g's. A cap M and a cap G on master gardener means a gardener who's taken all sorts of courses and passed some tests. But today we're going to decide on how you start gardening, and it's a perfect time for gardening. We all need comfort in these hard days, and you can get out there in that garden and you can feel so serene and working away, and you can see things happening, which is one of the most wonderful things. And it's a great thing to do with children. So the first thing you need to do is decide what you'd like to grow. Are you going to grow watermelons? Are you going to grow potatoes? Are you going to grow corn? Then you got to figure out your gardening zone and your estimated first and last frost dates. If possible, talk to gardeners in your area to find out which crops to grow and which don't. Lexington has always been known for tomatoes and celery and cucumbers. Way back when we had all the farms, we sold all those in Boston, and that was a very good time. I haven't seen that much corn around here. The number of days between the last frost and the first frost in a region is the length of your growing season. So when you pick up a pack of seeds, you've got to look how long it's going to take before you get your fruit. Now, the second thing you do, and Mina, if you put up that video, you choose a location. Mina's putting a video on. Most fruits and vegetables, here we go.
When I bought this house, I had moved up from New York and I wanted a garden. And I saw that as a perfect
You stopped it.
place for a garden. It was pretty loud. When I bought this house.
It's not working. Okay, it's not working too well. Why don't just talk it out? When I bought
Ashley, I think I just didn't do the sound right.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Oh, I said share computer sound.
You did.
Right.
That's not fun.
Yeah. Oops, shoot.
Oh.
When I bought this house, I had moved up from New York and I wanted a garden. And I saw that as a perfect place for a garden. It was pretty level, there was a lot of sun, and we could really have a vegetable garden. My first husband and I were quite tall, so he decided we have a raised bed so we didn't have to lean over so far. It also helped that we didn't have to dig up the sod that had been trodden down for generations. So let's walk down to it. Over the years, we discovered what grew and what didn't grow down there. And as you can see, we just dug it up. Tomatoes and cucumbers work like a charm. So do peas, basil underneath the tomato leaves, lettuce underneath the peppers because it's too much sun for the lettuce eventually. So we can grow all those. Last year we had almost 100 pounds of tomatoes. It was fantastic. In a good year of cucumbers, we can have 90 cucumbers. means I'm making a lot of pickles. And then Peter came into my life, my second husband. We realized that we were getting animals. So he put in that fence that you now see bordering the edges here. The fence goes down to the dirt and is this high, and it does a good job of keeping the rabbits out. It doesn't do such a good job of keeping the chipmunks out, but there are only several years that we've had major voracious chipmunks. And we've never had a problem here with raccoons or things like that, so that works fine. And it grows, and it's quite happy down here. Good.
Most fruits and vegetables need full sun with a minimum of 5 hours of direct sunlight per day for fruiting. Your greens like lettuce, your herbs, and root vegetables will grow in partial shade. As I said in that video, we plant the lettuce underneath the tomatoes, so otherwise it will wilt with too much strong sun. In looking for your location, so you need the full sun, you need to have a garden that's easily accessible. You don't want to have it so far away from your back door that you're, oh, I don't want to go down there and go get that thing. You also don't want it easily accessible to wildlife. That's why I have the fence. You don't want your children throwing your balls through it or riding your bikes through it. And you certainly want to keep out your bouncing golden retriever. So it's things to look at like that. And there's nice sunny areas, the first thing. And the third step is to plan your garden bed. Once you know where you want to have your garden, you decide on the size and type of your garden beds. Raised beds are very attractive and may make it easier to work in your garden, but they also dry out more quickly. On the other hand, somebody wrote me recently and he wanted to have raised beds on his porch, and there are all sorts of planters you could do. And the garden club put up planters outside of the community center. You can see them there, the sensory garden. I would suggest if you're the first time gardener, you start small and make sure to give each plant enough room to grow. If you grow vertically, you can squeeze more crops into less space. For instance, we have our cucumbers, all 90 of them, growing on one big trellis right there in that cage garden. And therefore, they don't sprawl all over the garden. It makes it a lot easier and neater. So there, now you have your garden bed, and you're going to figure out how to do it. You need to invest in your basic garden tools, which would be a spade, a pitchfork, an iron rake, a leaf rake, a hand trowel, pruners, and I would add a rain gauge, because it's important to know how much water your garden gets as we get into July and August. You also want to test your soil. There are soil kits you can buy. I find it just as easy to send it off to UMass at Amherst. They have a testing lab there. They give you your results back and tell you what you need to do with your soil. Now you got all that done. Now you prepare the soil. One of the ways of doing it is laying down wet newspaper or cardboard to smother the weeds and build a bed on top of them. Most plants prefer a deep, well-drained, fertile soil rich in organic matter. And we have video too showing where I get my deep, well-drained, fertile soil rich in organic matter.
So here I am chunking away at the compost pile. This is good for the muscles. When I can't go to the gym, this keeps me in shape. Meanwhile, my first husband would have called this black gold. It is so good for the garden. And matter of fact, I kind of scattered across our grass to make that even healthier. It really helps. I do this at home. I have a compost pail at home, but to get really good stuff that is really ground up, I come over here to Hartwell.
That's Hartwell Composting Facility right here in Lexington. And that is free to all Lexington residents, that along with bark mulch. And you can go there with your bucket and you can fill your bucket up. And I've met a lot of people who are just starting the garden over there as they dig that up. And it is really good stuff. You can also watch it composting. Take your kids over there and you will see it in the cold February days. You will see the compost steaming in the air, which is a really beautiful sight. I have my own compost pail. A lot of people do, but my compost won't steam because it's just a small composting thing. Now, your next step is to choose your right seeds or transplants. This is for your garden. You've figured it all out. Your garden's ready to go. What are you going to plant? That's the exciting thing. It's like Christmas. Are you going to buy this kind of tomato or that? You're going to buy little ones or yellow ones? How are you going to do it? To begin with, if you're a new gardener, I would say it's much easier to buy the plants. We have several great nurseries around us, and it's a little more complicated these days given the pandemic, but you can go to Mahoney's, McHugh's, New England Nursery, Wilson's, and you can buy a lot of these plants that are little tiny, ready to put in your ground. Matter of fact, Lexingtonian Field and Garden members, they end up getting a discount with their membership at these places. Wilson's is a great place. I have one friend who said she saved $200 at Wilson's by getting all her plants there. So you pick your plants, and now you want to plant with care. The seed package, or your little planter seed box, should tell you how deep to plant your seeds. For transplants, most transplants are planted at the same depth they are growing in the pot. I have another video here. Good, two kids.
Lexington Field and Garden Club, always when they pot their plants with plants, they'll put newspaper in the bottom of the pot. I think that kind of prevents the dirt from running out. You know, it makes it all healthier and so forth. So I'm going to take some of this very good compost that we got at Hartwell, my black gold, and I'm going to plant some parsley so I can have it near to the kitchen door. Now you can do this with a lot of herbs, basil and so forth. It depends what you like, and obviously what your sun is. I have a lot of sun next to my kitchen door, so it should work. The seeds are, the problem with seeds is they're tiny, and a whole bunch comes out at once. And then you cover it up. Now this is moist because it's rained in the last couple of days, so I don't have to water it. Under normal circumstances, you would water your seeds in to get them going, but you don't need to do that. So that's it, and according to the package, this should be ready in a couple of weeks, 60 days. So it's more than a couple of weeks.
Oh, now here's where it gets tricky. You want to wait until the danger of frost is past to plant your heat-loving plants. Heat-loving plants would be things like your tomatoes, your peppers, your cucumbers, your corn, if you're going to try something like that. And of course, we all want to get our tomatoes in because, you know, we love them usually. But at this time of year, and usually you can start planting by Patriots Day, it's a good time to plant your peas, your spinach, your lettuce, your radishes. There are other crops such as your beets, some of the root crops that you can put in now.
Ashley,
Memorial Day.
oh, Ashley, you have a question for what seeds did you just plant in that video?
That was parsley.
Thank you.
Where was I? Okay, wait. To plant the colder plants, ones that you can put in now, you would do it around Patriots Day. The heat-loving plants, a good line is Memorial Day. Then you know frost is over. I mean, after all, it was very warm and lovely yesterday. I was out in the garden. Today, look how cold it is. Nobody wants to be outside today. Young plants are easier to damage than older plants, so they may need protection or hardening off when they're planted outside. So if you buy something at the greenhouse, you know, in a nursery that's been inside, you want to slowly bring it outside, not exposing it immediately to the cold and the wind. kind of protect it. It's like a new baby. You got to be careful of it. Now, once you have those plants in, they're like lots of babies, and you're going to watch them grow, and that's what's the exciting part here. You need to nurture your plants, just like a mother nurtures her child. And we have one last video on nurturing.
When we deal with seeds, as I said, a whole bunch can come out at once. Here I've planted spinach and radishes early. Planted these about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they just started popping up. Now you can see that I had 2 lines of radishes here, and I tried dividing them, and so I got a 3rd line. But basically, to divide them, you really should take some eyebrow pluckers, will be fine, and just pull out one little thing. And you hate to do it, but it makes the other spinach stronger just to get it going. And this I took out too much, so then I'm going to divide that again. It's a very delicate operation. Yes, you can do this under lights in your basement, and we do, but my husband's been doing that for years, so you got to be, it's a harder job, frankly. But I think in 2 weeks, we'll probably be eating spinach here.
A rule of thumb in nurturing is the watering. And plants need around 1 inch of water per week during the growing season. That's why I suggest a rain gauge. If the rains fail and you have a whole week of 90-degree weather where we're all dying and so forth, you'll need to water your garden, and you want to know that. You don't want to flood it. You just need to water it and keep those plants moist. Overwatering is as bad as underwatering. So always check the soil before turning on a tap or hitting the rain bucket. Soil that is too wet can cause seeds and roots to rot. You can do a foliar feeds like compost tea, which can be added to your plants to give extra nutrition. And to make compost tea, you just take a bit of compost, like you get up at Hartwell, stick it in your watering pot, and then use that to water. And it gives them extra nutrition and a dose of healthy microbes while watering. Leafy greens like lettuce are typically cut and come again. You just kind of cut off the tops and then come back, and it grows again, and then it regrows for another harvest. And you can do that with your herbs too. With beans or peas, you pick them every 2 or 3 days. You harvest sweet corn when cobs are well filled out and the silk is dark. You harvest tomatoes and peppers when they're ripe, and you allow them to ripen to full sweetness and flavor. And then you say, I've done a good job when you bring in those tomatoes, and there they are, and you can smell the fresh tomatoes in your kitchen. You think, look what I just grew. It is wonderful. Now, if you grow winter squash, which is great if you have lots of space, because that just sprawls all over, but you need a lot of space, then you would pick that much later after frost. And that's about it as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure people have questions. There are a lot of questions in gardening, but gardens are very forgiving. You can do an awful lot of things with them. Okay.
So Ashley, thank you so much for all of that, and the videos were phenomenal. I do want to open it up for questions, and people can unmute themselves temporarily to ask questions. That will make it a little bit more interactive. Or if you feel like you're not getting in your questions, feel free to throw them into chat. I had it on the wrong setting, so it was only questions were coming to me only, but now they're going to everybody. Live and learn, people, live and learn. So yes, let's start with some questions.
I have a question.
Good.
My name's Penny, and I have not successfully planted anything really. And I'm just wondering, I want to do a landscape garden as well, and plant some ground cover. I want to do some herbs in there. Is there a time when it's too late to plant seeds?
Too late?
Too
No.
late? No?
No. If you're planting perennials, you can plant those throughout the year. Annuals only grow during the growing season. Does that make sense? You know what perennials and annuals are?
Yeah. Yes.
Perennials are something that you put in the ground and they should be with you forever. I have a friend, she gave me a poem yesterday. Hold on. Perennials, about perennials. The first year they sleep. The second year they creep. The third year they leap. When I bought this house, I found peonies that had been planted here in 1913. We celebrated their 100 years a while back. That's amazing to have a plant that's over 100 years old and it keeps blooming. So you can plant things like your chives, which will be with you forever. Could also spread throughout your garden, so you might want to put them in a pot because you may not want onion grass all over your garden. So it depends what you're planting. Can I help with that message or not? Okay.
Yes. Yes. You're focusing on vegetable gardens, right? And
But I can do flowers. I can do flowers too. If you do flowers, if you're planting annual flowers, I would start planting them depending on whether they can take frost or not. You can plant daylilies right now, and that would be fine. You can plant a lot of perennials right now, because after all, they've been out there all winter. But you can't plant your zinnias now because they want sun. They can't grow while there's still frost around, and there's still frost around.
Okay, thank you.
Ashley, you have a question from Shelley. Does the town still sell compost bins and rain barrels?
Well, that's an interesting question. They have been so busy over there. No one's mentioned that to me. I would give the DPW a call. They were more than happy to sell the rain barrels. You can also make your own. A rain barrel, we've made one out of a garbage can with a top and a hole in it. It's not as fancy as the rain barrels that sell, but the rain barrel is a very nice thing to have. And you feel like, oh, I'm being a good water conservationist.
Okay, and Kathy Santos sent me a message privately. I'm planting a wildflower pollinator garden from seed, native annuals and perennials. Should I add compost to the soil, or am I better off not doing any amendments?
I would add some compost to the soil because you have no idea what you're dealing with out there. If she's just doing it, and that soil could be old and tired and just plain dirt. It has nothing left in it. One of the gardens you should go over to and look at, and if that's what you're doing, is Monroe Tavern has 3 beautiful gardens that are quite old, and one is a wildflower garden that's been kept since 1980 with gorgeous wildflowers in it. That's a garden club garden on land owned by the Lexington Historical Society. I see some young gardeners there. That you're going to put them out growing radishes and so forth. I think that'd be great. I have a grandson who grows all sorts of things.
It looks like all the questions are coming to me, so I'll just be your speaker.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
How to make compost at home? How to
compost at home? You need
How to
a
make compost, yeah.
You need a compost bin. And those are better bought, I think. And I would suggest what my husband did is you put a screen around the bottom of it to keep out animals. I had a lovely one over at the church where I gardened for the church, and somebody happily put bread in it. Well, all of a sudden the church compost had rats, and that was the end of composting at the church. So you got to be very careful with home compost because it's not like the compost that people put out in the little green cans. You can't use meat or bread. You can only use fresh vegetables and fruit and eggshells.
I'm sorry, Mina, can I ask a question? I'm not sure how to send it to you. Could I ask directly?
Yes.
Okay, Ashley, a question about zucchini and eggplant, etc. My tomatoes and cucumbers do okay, but every year I plant zucchini and I get no fruit. So I wrote to Carol Stalker of the Boston Globe. She actually published my letter last year and said, she called it, this was weird, she called it plant sex. She said, you need to, since I have no bees, right? She said, take a Q-tip and put the pollen, from one to the other, because the plant is both male and female. Right. I did enrich my soil. I sent it to UMass, enrich my soil. So is there any tips for growing zucchini? Because every year I plant 4 or 5 plants and I get one zucchini maybe.
Oh, boy.
Try summer squash.
My
Summer
husband,
squash.
suggests summer squash. That is a little easier. Or how about getting a beehive? I have a beehive. I just got it a couple of years ago, and it was amazing how much honey I got.
Oh, I probably won't get a beehive, but can you suggest any flowers to plant? Or should I do the Q-tip thing where I take the pollen from one part and put it in the female part? Should I do that like she suggested?
You could try that. It was a good suggestion. Otherwise, look for pollinator plants.
Okay.
Things like bee balm and stuff that might attract the bees to your garden. And look for those plants to attract that kind of insect, which will help you.
Mm-hmm. And any tips for peppers and eggplant? The same thing. I grow them and nothing comes.
I had an old Italian grocer years ago who told me the way to plant peppers, and I still do it, is put your plant in and then put 4 wooden matches, in the old kind that you used to use in the big gas stove, and bury it right around it in a little box around it. And those wooden matches would make the peppers grow. And I got peppers every year when I did that.
So I'm sorry, you put the 4 matches inside the box or just separately?
In a box. So here's your plant. You do 4 matches around it in the ground.
Oh, bury the matches.
Head down. Yes, you bury the matches. Head down, like that.
Inside the box. Okay, thank you.
How much sun are you getting?
Well, I used to get 6 to 7 hours, but now I have huge trees that block a lot of the sun.
Oh, that's part of the problem.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Okay.
Right, because my tomatoes and cucumbers used to be amazing, and now they're less, and it's because of lack of less sun. But the trees are massive.
Okay, you need 5 hours of sun. 5 to 6 hours of sun. So you might want to look for another place. Lexington does have community gardens.
Right.
That's another place you might look at. Or
Okay.
maybe you have a friend who has space who would be happy for you to grow the zucchini there, and she'll take some of the zucchini for and pay. It'll be another way of doing it. You might be really just wasting your time if you don't have that much sun.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Melissa wanted to know what veggies are the lowest maintenance?
Oh,
Tomatoes.
oh, I think you work on the tomatoes a lot.
Well, what we do with the tomatoes is use tomato cages. So when one plants the tomato plant and you put one of the tomato cages in place, then just let it go and don't worry about it. You get an awful lot of growth and you don't have to nip the suckers and do things like that. It just let it run wild.
Okay, as long as you're on tomatoes, we have a question from Bridget to everyone. What food do you give tomatoes and how often do you feed? Peter.
Oh, I start when we transplant the tomatoes into the ground. I put probably a good tablespoonful of 5-10-5 or 10-10 fertilizer, and I bury the tomato plants. Like, if you got the top of the plant, that should go down about 4 to 6 inches. So you get a lot of the stem underground, which fosters the development of a nice root structure. So that's what I do as far as fertilization is concerned. I also have a little trick I use. I put a tablespoonful of Epsom salts in each hole when I put the plant in, because tomato plants like acid soil, and Epsom salts are certainly that sort of thing, an acid. That's roughly it. I really have never, other than when I put the plants in the ground, I give them a little watering can full of liquid fertilizer, and that's it. And I just let them go.
But I would add that during the winter, as Bridget well knows, I will put seaweed into that garden to help make it richer. And if I go visit a friend who lives on the water, I'm gathering a bag of seaweed. Penny has asked, are there any flowers that do not attract bees? Oh, these days, Penny, everybody's pushing you on your flowers to attract. And I haven't heard of it the other way. I'm sure there are flowers that don't attract bees. I don't see bees on our roses. I would have to go look that up. We're going to, matter of fact, Mina's already asked us to do another one. I will give you the answer later on that one, if I can.
Okay, so a question from Anne Marie: should I buy topsoil?
I'd go to the compost seed. Well, it depends whether she wants to go dig it at Hartwell, which is good for the mussels, or do you want to just buy it? You know, it's up to you.
Okay. How do you know how much space to leave for your plants? We've planted tomatoes, but then they ended up being too close together.
24 inches.
24 inches. That's from Kristen.
Okay.
So that's a solid 24 inches. Okay.
And then you either stake them or put them in a
Cage.
cage to raise them,
Okay.
to bring them up the air.
What about starting some seedlings indoor first?
Oh boy. Okay, we do start seedlings indoors, but the problem about that is it's late now to start any seedlings indoors, because by the time they get ready, you know, you should be out there ready to go. They can dampen off, they can rot. You know, it's fun if they come out, but you have to really pay attention to them. And just as the sun from a windowsill may not do it. Our seeds indoors are under lights, and we have to go down to the basement every day to water it and take care of it and all the rest of it. But try it. You know, it's always fun to do it. It's a good experiment. Certainly with kids, I would do things like avocado seeds and grow a plant and do that.
I saw mom like go
That's
with
all.
her kids. Okay, so that was from Nelson. Santa Bar wants to know, can I use fresh tomato seeds for gardening?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Just a flat no. Got it.
I would say, yeah, get real tomato seeds. Get the ones that have been taken care of.
Okay. So Anne Marie says, I have an apple tree that flowers every year, but I do not get any apples. They are eaten by birds or bugs.
Yeah, that's right. Does she spray it?
Let's see. Anne Marie.
Hi, this is Anne Marie. Yep. Thank you. So we do spray it, but I don't know if it, you know, when you go to an orchard, they have these nets over it. But I mean, it's a tall tree.
Right.
We get pears. We have a pear tree, and we get pears from the pear tree. But we see the apple flowers come up, and then some apples come, and then I assume that they're just eaten by something.
You know what I would do is I would take the leaf, a couple leaves over to a New England nursery. They used to do a good job of sort of analyzing and saying, this is what's happening to your tree.
Okay.
Somebody may be into that tree. You're right.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
eating away at it that you don't know.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
And Melissa asked, do you have recommendations for resources on the best layout for an 8x4 foot bed?
Best layout. We just plant in rows. Some people plant in squares. You have your choice.
So I don't know, are all veggies compatible then?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So if we're doing our little garden and we just say, hey, we want a few tomatoes and a few cucumbers, I guess I don't know if there's resources to, I mean, I haven't really looked it up, but on the layout, like optimizing the layout of that space.
They're compatible. A matter of fact, all your vegetables are compatible. You just have to figure out what you actually want. As I said, if you grow winter squash and watermelon or any of the melon type things, or even your cucumbers, they can sprawl all over your garden. So that's why I would grow them up in a trellis. And that way it gets it out of there and you have a vertical garden then growing up that trellis. Then you have your tomatoes and the lettuce could go underneath that, you know, get some shade. And that can work that way. But they all are happy together. Before rabbits discovered my marigolds, I always used to plant marigolds around the vegetable garden because that keeps away the bugs from the vegetables, supposedly. And it looked very pretty if you're really going to do that. Did that help at all, Melissa?
She said thumbs up.
Okay, good.
How do I keep squash vine borers away from my pumpkins? That's from Kathy Santos.
Ooh.
You guys are welcome to unmute yourselves if you want to ask questions as well. Just want to give you that option.
I'm going to turn that one over to Peter. He knows more about borers than I do.
You've been down that road too. With summer squash and zucchini, borer gets in there, which looks very much like a larvae from a fly. And they're about probably an inch or less.
What color?
And they're white.
Ugh.
Anyway, with zucchini or summer squash, when one senses that one has them, is you make a slice in the stem, take out the grub that's in there, dispose of it, and then build up a mound of wet soil over where you made the incision. And hopefully the plant will take off and still go from that point. But they're insidious. That's why I say I really gave up on zucchini, because it was just, I was forever slicing them open, getting rid of the little insects that are in there, and then, for covering it back up again. Just got to be too much work, especially when you can go to the, roadside stand like Wilson's and get all the zucchini you want for a couple of bucks.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Melissa says they have to sign off, so goodbye to them. Bye.
Bye, Melissa.
Good luck.
Good luck with your garden.
Does anybody else have questions? Because I don't have any more written ones.
Could I ask another question?
Of course.
Ashley,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is Regina. I have a question for you. How are you?
Hi there.
I wanted to know if there were any books that you might recommend for reading for people who are really beginning vegetable gardeners that might be of.
The Victory Garden? Yeah, Peter says he has one.
Yeah, my favorite, my Bible basically is the Victory Garden, which came out of the TV series.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
it's long out of print, but I found a copy in an antique bookstore or a bookstore for old volumes
Amazon will have it.
some years ago, and gave that to one of my children. And that's my Bible. And interestingly, Russ Morash, who's a Lexington resident, is the guy who sort of put that whole program together.
And he will be speaking for the Garden Club next year,
There you go.
this fall.
There you go. He was Lexington High School class of 1953.
Okay. What I
thank you.
also do, Regina, is I go on Google.
Thank you.
Could I ask another question? I already asked one.
Go ahead.
So I have a tree in my front yard. I think it's Norwegian maple. I had a tree guy come and he said it's totally dead. The bark is dead. But the funny thing is, half the tree seems dead and the other half has, buds and leaves. So how can a tree that's dead, how can half of it bloom? It's got beautiful, leaves and buds right now.
I'm not sure about the answer to that. I will tell you, Norway maples were planted heavily in town, maybe in the 50s, because everybody thought, oh, this is a great tree. It's a lousy tree because it sucks up all the water from everything else.
Oh, that's what he said. But I'm just confused as to how it can be dead even half of it is flowering. But he said it's totally dead.
Well, I don't know. Well, I would have to see it or something. I don't understand the totally dead either.
Okay.
It doesn't make total sense. Maybe
Right.
on its way, it's dying.
Okay.
And you're lucky if it's dying because it is a bad tree to have now.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I see Sandy Gasparo. Hi there. Any other questions? Oh, yes, wait, I see one. I apologize. I caught only the tail end of the tomato planting guidance. Is it possible to go over that again? Otherwise, I will catch it in the recording. Peter, you did the
What?
tomato. How do you plant a tomato?
Well, dig a hole, obviously. My father always used to say, dig a $2 hole for a 50-cent plant, so make the hole plenty big. I bury the tomatoes deep, which means there's plenty of the stem that goes down into the hole. Firm up the soil and you're off and running, and put a cage, a tomato cage up, or string it up on a pole. When I plant the tomato plant, I put probably a good tablespoonful of fertilizer at the bottom of the hole, and that's either 5-10-5 or 10-10-10. And an old trick I learned from an English gardener was to put a tablespoonful of Epsom salt in, because tomatoes like an acid soil, and Epsom salts are certainly acid. And so that's my technique. I suspect there's a technique that goes with every tomato gardener, but that's mine.
And it seems to work. We get a lot of tomatoes. And Peter is happily weighing them every time I bring up a basket full.
Wow. And do you put the fertilizer and the Epsom salts in the hole and then put the tomato plant in?
Correct.
First you put, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Any
Ashley's
other-
working, bro.
I have another question. There is a movement to buy organic seedlings. Has anyone noticed a difference between the seedlings you get that are not organic and the organic ones?
Money.
Money, and the name. Hi, Bridget. I don't know that there is a particular difference in the whole thing. I do remember a lecture from the Wilsons at the Garden Club. They do not do organic because they said it's too expensive. It's very difficult to do. And the plants aren't as strong as many of the regular plants, the hybrids and so forth that we would buy. So once you get into that, then it's a trick, you know, whether you want to do it or not.
Good answer. Can I just ask another smaller one? What is the optimum size plant, tomato plant, that from your experience you should plant? Because I used to buy the very little ones, like the 4 for $1, and they took forever to grow.
6 to 8 inches.
6 to 8 inches, and don't put them in until after the last frost.
Okay, which has happened right now.
Oh, it has not happened.
Thank you very much for this talk.
You're very welcome. Nice to have you there.
Actually, I have a question from Nelson who says, we have some seed packets that say they were packed in 2018. Are they still good for planting?
They may very well be. If it's up for grabs, you don't know.
There is a trick which is out of the book Crockett's Victory Garden, and it's to take some of the seeds. Well, number one, spread a paper towel on a dry surface, dampen it, sprinkle some of the seeds on there, put another wet paper towel on top of that. Leave it in a warm place and see what happens with the seeds after a couple of days or maybe even a week. And if they sprout, they're okay.
Thank you.
It's a gamble, but I think, you know, and when you buy those seed packets, it's a gamble. It's just like when you buy tubers for bulbs. I bought a bunch of caladium. Some worked and some didn't. So, you know, you're trying to do your best.
The other thing we've done too is collect seeds. The ones we've collected, at least I have primarily, are impatiens, and it's another crapshoot there. Sometimes they grow, sometimes they don't. It's very interesting.
But this is what gardening's about. It's kind of a wonderful way of spending time, a very comforting way. You're gonna be out there, and the world is going crazy, but you're just concentrating on those weeds and doing that. And you know, life is good out in the sun, watching these things grow. It's all right. It's not always all right, but there it's
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That was wonderful. Do we have any last questions, or do we want to end on that very positive and lovely note? Okay. Well, thank you, Ashley and Peter. You're a bonus guest for us, for joining us. I wanted to remind everybody that this is being recorded, so we will put it on YouTube later today. And I will share out Ashley's notes with anybody who would like the tips directly, because we didn't, if they didn't get to write them down. And I will send out a note with our feedback survey. So if you are happy letting us know how we're doing, we would appreciate that and what we can do better. But in the meantime, let us thank Ashley with a great round of applause.
Thank you, Ashley.
Peter, thank you so much. And Ashley did mention that we're going to do another program, a gardening program, on May 6th with Guy Duran about container gardening. Is that right?
Yes. I haven't talked to him today. He's hard to reach because he's often out in his garden, but he is a well-known gardener in town, and he's going to do container gardening with vegetables. So that's another way, if you don't want to put a whole great big garden in it, to put your tomatoes in a nice big pot and stick them out there. You can do it. I grow lettuce in a pot. It's easily done. Makes life much easier at times.
Awesome.
So enjoy. I hope to find you all out in the sun and come look and see what we can do. Okay? Feel free to stop by.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Ashley, can you stay for a minute, and Matt too?
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ashley and Peter.
Hi there.